All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, today is our AMA show that we're going to try to do Tuesdays throughout the NFL offseason. So we'll go through a lot of questions that were sent at us. Thanks for everyone who sent them through. Then we'll talk a little Brooklyn Nets after they let go of Jacques Vaughn, and then some Russell Wilson and his 2024 team at the end. But let's start off with the questions. The first one, Drew, is from at Go Pepper. Do you all think NBA and NFL higher-ups have told writers to cut back on award polling? No Pelissero poll at the end of the NFL season, no real mid-season NBA polling like how Mark Medina would always publish. Pros and cons as an award bettor. Thanks in advance, show crushers. Thank you, Go Pepper. What do you think, Drew?
I think almost certainly the NFL. They put, as far as we can tell, there was a fatwa on writing an article at the end of the year about who you voted on because they wanted the the awards show to have drama. I found it annoying. I think
I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, I think you should have to be pretty transparent about your decision making process, and you should publish why who you voted for and why you made those decisions. I know a lot of people still talk about it on podcasts, at least the NBA people, which I appreciate a lot because you get insight into people's thought process, and that helps you understand better how to shape these markets, how they ought to be priced. And I think it's a pretty valuable part of the conversation, and keeping it cloak and dagger is ridiculous.
Yep. No, I agree. I think in terms of, from just like kind of real world non-gambling perspective, I think people should absolutely declare their votes. Like your voting on awards has ripples into, people's salaries and stuff. And I think that, you shouldn't be able to just like get away with having, if you voted someone ridiculous like Joe Flacco for comeback player of the year. Strangely, no other examples sprung to mind. That's the only thing in my mind still. I think you should have to declare that. I know our friend, NBC's own Mike Florio, has been big on that, and I agree with that. I agree with Mike on that. In terms of like handicapping and pros and cons for this, in terms of betting these markets, personally, I would prefer that in terms of mid-season stuff, I would prefer there was no polling at all. I would rather be completely in the dark because I think that my strength as a handicapper of these is being able to project what people will vote for, and I'm going to be wrong sometimes, but relative to market, I'm going to be right more often than I'm wrong. And when there are these polls, it's just like a public cheat sheet, and it infects the markets, and it gets everyone closer, gets the market closer to truth, and it makes it easier for books to price these markets, and it can erode value. And the example of this that's closest to my heart is that with a month to go in the 21-22 NBA season, Marcus Smart was 500 to 1 to win Defensive Player of the Year, and I thought he should be the favorite. Now, if there was mid-season polling at that point, then I just would have been screwed entirely because the market would have just completely tanked on Smart. But the fact there was no polling allowed for that. Same thing this year, where if Pelissero did his poll, I guarantee we're not getting Myles Garrett at plus 150 with 2 weeks left in the season. Like he would be minus 300, which was what he should have been. And that's why, and this is the same thing the year before, like Nick Bosa. It was pretty clear that Nick Bosa was going to win. And then there is a poll that gets released, and his price completely tanks. So we probably lose 2 extra weeks of being able to bet Nick Bosa at minus 110 when his true price minus 750 or whatever. So I know we're in the middle of NBA season now. There are some awards that are really, I don't think anyone has like a fantastic grip on what is going to happen in Most Improved Player, in Sixth Man of the Year, probably those two in particular. Like here's the thing too, is that like there's basically no polling on Clutch Player of the Year. And if there were polling, then Stephen Curry, when he was plus 700, would have been like minus 250. So I think that the fact that it doesn't exist a lot this year is beneficial if you are able to solve these markets. But what do you think overall?
Yeah, no, I would also, I agree with your take. And I would also just add the midseason polling to me felt like in some ways, when you put yourself on record mid-season, like now you're kind of anchored to your take there, and it's sometimes it's a little tougher to come off of it, even if it's clearly wrong. And so you got some weird stuff where people kind of had committed to a bit on a guy being a given award, and they stick with it to the end because they said they were going to do it in February. In reality, you should just reevaluate at the end of the season with all the information you have and make your decision then. And so I think the Pelissero one is kind of interesting just because I don't know if that had to do with the NFL kind of clamping down on just awards information being disseminated, or if it was just bad timing because he couldn't get in touch with people because of the holidays. Like the schedule and the sequencing really around Christmas and New Year's this year was pretty bizarre. And I think that might have thrown some monkey wrenches into things. The idea of this being kind of fully cooked before you can get your full stake in is probably the most important of this whole conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. The other thing too is that in terms of like how much value you attach to the polls that actually do come out, and there are always polls in some form, is I would say one, like make sure that you know who is participating in the poll, because like there are some like CBS polls on the NFL where people participating are like guys who cover the Pistons and stuff. So it's like, all right, well, I'm not going to weight that as much as if you're polling, like the Greg Wyshynski poll on ESPN for NHL awards. That is like polling actual voters. So obviously you got to figure out, how valuable the information is. The other thing too is that you have to remember, like, it's a snapshot in time at that moment. It's not necessarily that same snapshot the same one is going to exist towards the end of the season. Where I think it is valuable is when you compare candidates who you might think on merit have similar cases. And if one is just lapping the other across the board, that gives an indication that that guy just has more juice. And that's why, the polling at midseason this year was particularly valuable for me with MVP, and just seeing how Lamar Jackson was winning every single poll, despite the fact that he had no case whatsoever. So I was like, all right, well, from Miami, they're probably just going to win MVP because people think that, he's really good. And they think he's better than Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa. And that's probably all that's going to matter if people have an excuse to vote for him. That would be my thoughts there. All right, question 2 from our friend, retired donator at NFL Pinnacle Beat, previously a Pinnacle Beater, now a retired donator. Phoenix at Oklahoma City series price. Now, this is super interesting to me because, the futures market will tell you, like, Phoenix is shorter than OKC everywhere to win the title, to win the West.
Insane.
But, and I know this is never perfect, it's never 1-to-1, but like Oklahoma City went into Dallas a week ago. I understand they got destroyed, but they were 2.5-point favorites in Dallas with Luka and Kyrie healthy. I think Derek Lively might have missed, so it's not perfect. And there's always rest stuff and travel stuff in this. But Dallas at 2.5-point favorites home to Phoenix, the first game out of the All-Star break. The market has a ton of respect for OKC, which makes sense because I think they have the second best net rating in the NBA. And is a little more skeptical on Phoenix. Now, I guess you could say that in the playoffs, that with the ability of KD and Booker to play, 44 minutes, and the fact that the Suns, arguably have less depth than Oklahoma City, they probably get a bigger playoff adjustment. But if OKC have home court in that series, which if it does occur, they almost certainly will, then I think Oklahoma City have to be slight favorites there. Like at the top of my head, I was thinking like OKC, like minus 120, minus 125. What do you think?
Okay, so are you thinking are you making the market, or are you coming up with your fare there? Because I think there's pretty different answers, right? Like the market might give us, like we saw with Nuggets Suns last year, whereas there's just there's an aura, there's until you've done it, until you've won the championship, you're gonna get situations where a team with KD on it is treated as the better team because they have the better player, because he has won rings and you don't have a guy that has won rings, and so I think there's a very real world where if this occurred in, say, round 2 of the playoffs, which is probably where it most likely would happen, in like a 1-5 or a 1-4, right? That's probably where you would see this, and I think in that scenario you would potentially get minus 120 plus 100 in favor of Phoenix. My fare on this is Oklahoma City minus 180. So I would have a pretty decent side on Oklahoma City in this. And again, like my I think the two Dallas games you brought up is a great kind of snapshot in time of like how does the market feel about these teams now? I currently have about a just over 2.5 points difference on a neutral with Oklahoma City favored. And if we actually did break down that series, it would be tough to find reasons to get involved with Phoenix. I have to say. So yeah, I think we're going to be in an interesting world this year in the NBA playoff series betting markets with teams like Oklahoma City who don't have pedigree, who don't have experience, and who are going to be at a discount because of those factors. And you're going to have to make some tough decisions about do you trust your math and your numbers here, or do you go with the vibes and the mysticism and the star power that comes with some of the kind of the funkiness of playoff series? So I think I really hope we get this series. I really would love to see these two teams in the later stages of the playoffs. And I mean, I guess if I could just pick second round playoff series, I would like to see Clippers Nuggets, and I would like to see Thunder Suns. Those would be pretty awesome. Yeah. And no disrespect to the Timberwolves, but I don't, not really my brand of basketball watching the Timberwolves. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I would have a pretty decent edge on Oklahoma City in our kind of in our thought exercise here. And we haven't even gotten around to the idea of like who is ultimately going to be available for the Suns. Like, is Bradley Beal playing?
Yeah, I think as someone who's holding a lot of Celtics title, I'd love to see the Timberwolves in the finals. Maybe that's famous last word, but there would be very Celtics to lose to Karl Anthony Towns in the finals, but I don't think that would happen. I think the sneaky thing with Phoenix is that, and maybe it's not sneaky, but Kevin Durant just isn't as good, which maybe makes sense because he's in his age 35 season, but true shooting is down, EPM is down, his defense is worse. He's just not the same all-encompassing force that he was last year when he was a legit, I think, top 3 MVP candidate when he was in Brooklyn. He hasn't really been at that level in Phoenix. And I think the stuff about Phoenix's depth is, I don't know, maybe a little bit overrated, because I think between Grayson Allen and Okogie and Royce O'Neal and Eric Gordon, I think they have enough players there. But yeah, it is the question of, it's weird to say this about the Suns, but like, is the top end talent? Like, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is pretty clearly the best player in that series at this point, and you could argue that OKC have the better depth too. So I suspect with just the market seems to be a little bit out on Phoenix at the moment, and that can change as their big three plays more together. But I thought that what the market would have it is OKC very slight favorites, but could be wrong on that. All right, question 3 for you, Drew, from, you can say the guy's name. Any tips for handicapping betting swimming? Figured I would get in on the World Championship, so I'm ready when the Olympics come this summer. Yeah,
it's a great question. That's what you should be thinking about in the off season, is literally just preparing for what is going to be a pretty awesome 2 weeks in July and August. And the Aquatic World Championships just wrapping up here in Doha. They were awesome. It's always weird in an Olympic year because they push this event into the winter when, you have a lot of athletes who are competing for NCAAs. You have a lot of athletes who are just kind of in the kind of middle of the bulk of their training. Like Katie Ledecky didn't go because she is kind of in kind of the heart of her hardcore training right now. I think the keys to getting started, if you're going to bet any sport in the Olympics, I think the first thing that you ought to do is find odds for last time, right? Find pre-event odds and take a look at, and try to figure out, how did they come up with this? Why was this why was this swimmer the favorite before the meet started? Why was this event like a kind of a cluster at the top as opposed to having a strong favorite? Whereas this event, there was someone who was minus 5,000 before we even saw anyone jump in the pool. And so, kind of going through that exercise of just looking at last time and kind of trying to take a snapshot of, what was the market looking like on the eve of the event? And then, try to figure out why why it was right, why it was wrong, and just in particular looking at certain events and trying to figure out, okay, well, 50 free is a little random. It's a little tough to tell who's going to be the fastest when it comes down to start, and who got the best start off the blocks. And it's a little tougher than it is to figure out who's going to win the women's 1500, right? There's huge differences when it comes from event to event, and I would particularly say if you can kind of start by figuring out how the market prices and then pay attention to the qualifying, which is the true ramp up. News and information that comes out through the qualifying cycle, like when that's being aired, the stuff that they're saying on the broadcast is always very valuable. You'll get nuggets like, oh, this person is expecting to do a personal best and they're not tapered, right? And you're like, oh, buddy, like, okay, we got something good cooking here, right? And I think ultimately, the news and information across qualifying is huge. And then when you get to the event itself, there's uniqueness about swimming where it's a multi-stage qualification process, right? You get into the Olympics, congratulations. You do your heats, 16 qualify for semifinals, 8 then qualify for finals. And, that's for most events. The distance events, there's only 2. There's only semis and finals. But the idea of performing progressively and getting better as you get to the finals and being able to swim your fastest race at that final stage is an important factor that a lot of swimmers, really kind of take seriously. And so, as the event is going on, like trying to, do enough to qualify for the next stage, but not so much that you've shot your best shot before you get to the finals is kind of a funny balancing act, the way that the swimming, tends to play out. So these are all just some tips and some hints. Every sport has unique, weird wrinkles like this, and like kind of really just digging into the rules, digging into the format, and really trying to understand why the market is priced the way it's priced is all valuable, in my opinion. Any thoughts from you, Jay?
Yep. And that question was from, I believe, Mike Piccinino. I could be screwing that pronunciation up. I will say that, yeah, I agree with everything you said. And then also just with swimming, with a lot of like the 100-meter, 200-meter sprints, like this kind of stuff, like it can be deceptive just looking at times, because like you should actually, if you're betting this stuff, you need to actually watch the race, because there's a lot of, and we talked about this before, but market prices will be skewed off of heat times. And a lot of the times, like, one of the presumptive favorites beforehand is just clearly taking the foot off the gas in the last 10, 15 meters. And that has infected their price when it really shouldn't have. And now it's difficult to kind of mend all together. But you can find some advantages there, I think. All right. Question from our friend Garrett Gibson. Golf handicapping approach. Other than originating your own projections, what do you look for to bet on different golfers, and how do you weight different things? Also, how do you try to structure your portfolio for any given week? Focus on matchups, outrights, top finishes, etc. Also, is my general strategy on the following: flawed or sound. I like to isolate putting stats and bet guys live in between rounds that are good tee to green, but struggling with the putter, and vice versa. Fade hot putters who aren't as great tee to green, relying on putting as the most volatile stat. What say you, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, the last part is probably the most important, which is to say, if you are coming at this with a kind of a hybrid quantitative, qualitative approach where you're just looking for who could be overpriced, underpriced, and preying on the idea of there being a buy low, sell high on a given player with a volatile stat like putting, like, congratulations, like you've made it to like, the Masters level handicapping golf, from what I can tell you. And the kind of broader question about process, I think is maybe flawed at the very start of that question, which is, other than originating, like that's what you should be doing. Like, you should be coming up with fares. And I would, kind of focus on stuff that is around 50-50, like matchups, as opposed to trying to really dial in on fares for, for outrights and first round leaders and stuff like that. Because with anything, even if you have a really good edge on something that's a very relatively low likelihood outcome, you could really grind and lose a lot before you start to see some results and before you start to get some feedback is your process correct? Is it flawed? And if you're out there, you're like, man, these guys are 160, they should be 80, and you bet 3 of them in a given week, and they may outperform their data golf projections. Congratulations. Like this, you still need some luck to actually get those to the window. So I think focusing a little bit on matchups to start with is important, and I think using a strokes gained framework is valuable. I will caveat all this by saying about 2 years ago, I did my full year's worth of numbers, 2022, and I was pretty sick to my stomach about what a leak betting golf was for me. And so I ramped down big time in 2023, and I'm just kind of almost all the way out now and just enjoying it as a fan in 2024, because the people who are kind of solved golf are freaking brilliant, and they're doing it quantitatively. I think if you want to get there, you can. I would start with kind of the specific data golf framework and understand how they came up with their models, how they're coming up with their numbers, and then try to take a look at over a couple of events, where are they getting things wrong, and then try to sort out why are they getting things wrong. And then if you can incorporate one layer on top of what they're already doing, where they're like find a bust, like, oh my gosh, they're not rating recent performance nearly strongly enough. They're kind of just taking an average over 18 months. Like they should be really focusing on who's performing well now, because there's a hot hand going on here, right? Like something like that could be a little bit of a breakthrough if you're really looking at their numbers, or coming up with like some other kind of quantitative number that you can add as a layer onto what they're doing, and really kind of reduce where they're misfitting on their projections. I think is where I would attack. Now, it's a huge time investment to do that. So best of luck to you if you choose to go that route. But otherwise, I think just in general, using sort of a hybrid quantitative approach where you're specifically buying low, selling high because of putting, that seems reasonable to me.
Yep. No, I think that seems reasonable to me as well. I think that a lot of flawed analysis, not necessarily from bettors, but from pundits about golf and predicting who is going to do well at a given tournament, is the idea that they're going to sustain a hot putter, which is to Garrett's point, extremely volatile. I'm not originating golf myself, but the feedback I would give in terms of kind of my experience working for a book and just knowing people in the industry is, to your point, there are a ton of the smartest bettors in the world who kind of for a living solve golf outrights and golf markets. And it's a pretty difficult, particularly outrights, a very difficult market to crack. Secondly, when I worked at a book, the market that we leaked the most on by far to sharp clients were tournament matchups, and those are the markets that get targeted the most. I think that they're the most exploitable. So if you're going to try and invest time in solving something in golf, I would be trying to solve that instead of trying to solve who's going to win the Masters, which is pretty difficult. And then the third one, it's the random one, but golf live trading isn't as automated as most people would expect. And when you're live trading a golf tournament, it is just really hard to keep track of everyone on Thursday and Friday. And that is where there will be, if you're trying to pick off prices, particularly with guys who are longer in the field, you always know where Scotty Scheffler's price should be. But if you're looking, further down, then there's a potential that, you can get a guy at 200 to 1 when he's actually moved to 35 to 1, and books kind of struggle keeping up with that type of stuff. So that would be my feedback on the golf. All right, spring training is here. So for those looking to get ahead on the upcoming MLB season, grab your RotoWorld Baseball Draft Guide. It's loaded with comprehensive positional rankings, projections, and player profiles to ensure your draft is a success. Visit NBCSports.com/draft guide and use code BASEBALL24 to get 10% off at checkout. All right, one more question from Archer Sterling 007. which is a great name. Would love your insight and opinions on crypto market, BTC, etc., NBA, movies, and travel. I like an open-ended question. Always enjoyed an exam, Drew, because I could take it wherever I wanted. But I'll let you start off. Where do you want to go with this?
I'll go with crypto first then. The halving is a programmed, it's a coded supply shock for available Bitcoin, and it's coming up in April. The signal is pretty clear through every halving we've had that there is, with supply shock, price goes up. And so if you're looking to speculate, I think, the 2024 in particular, the late spring is probably, if you're not already paying close attention, is really where you need to start watching for opportunities to enter the market. And I would also say that everything that is tangential to Bitcoin, all of the alt currencies and the NFTs and all that, it is all garbage. Fundamentally, it does not have anything. It is all speculative nonsense. Bitcoin is actually used to settle, to settle debts and to, kind of move money globally at large scale with perfect fidelity and with, your own custody of your own money. And so it has use. All the rest of that stuff does not. That does not mean that the prices of those garbage assets won't also go up. They may go up even more phenomenally because it's just a speculative bubble. But I particularly stick to Bitcoin, and I try to time entry and exit with, just in general, what's going on worldwide. This is now an asset that's being traded through, ETFs and, in futures markets, globally. So, there's a lot of stability. There's a lot of infrastructure. It's $1 trillion asset. And I think realistically has scope to get into the multiple trillions of dollars in our lifetime. And I think that means that with a supply that is capped, price will go up. None of this is investment advice. And I think realistically, it's, don't get too excited about this stuff because it is all still, somewhat new. But that said, 2024 is going to be a pretty exciting time in crypto, I would guess.
Okay. Well, I'm way out of my depth with crypto, so I'm going to on that. I would have no idea what I'm talking about. So I will go with movies and travel as part of Archer 007's question. So you can talk about Bitcoin. I will talk about Ryan Reynolds. The most underrated film of the past 15 to 17 years for me is a film called Mississippi Grind with Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds, which is about a down-on-his-luck gambler. And this film never gets talked about in the same breath as Rounders, for instance, which I think is probably the kind of definitional kind of gambling film. I'm not going to throw two for the money in there, but Mississippi Grind it's a magnificent film, regardless of whether you're a bettor or not. I'm stunned that this doesn't have more kind of pull in the zeitgeist, but it's a movie that should be watched. It has a 6.4 out of 10 rating on IMDb. The 91% on Rotten Tomatoes is much more indicative of the film's quality. So highly recommend everyone watch Mississippi Grind. And then for the travel aspect of your question, Archer, the two best trips I've ever done in my life. One was taking the Trans-Siberian Railway from Moscow to Vladivostok, which you probably don't want to do for a little while yet. So the second best trip of my life was going backpacking from La Paz in Bolivia, all the way down to Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina, all through Patagonia, going through in particular the northern parts of Patagonia, Pucón, Bariloche, and then you go down further south. El Calafate sucks, and it's where it's very touristy, no good. But there's a smaller town near El Calafate called El Chalten, which is much more untouched. You won't get reception, and the mountains are magnificent. So El Chalten. And Pucón, Bariloche, Patagonia in general would be my travel tip. Drew, anything to add? Any comments on Two for the Money?
No, not my type of movie. But okay. I'm going to check out Mississippi Grind, though. That was a very strong recommendation. Yeah. I got a lot of homework to do on movies. Oscars coming up. Obviously, there's no betting to be had really on the Oscars. I'm not sure if you've seen those markets, but they look pretty solved. Oppenheimer's finally on Max, so that's fun. And I'm in general, I'm more of a travel guy than a movie guy. But those were especially fun tips for Patagonia. I'm putting that higher on my list. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Yeah, Oscars wise, I had once upon a time I had a Damar Hamlin type of stake on Heath Ledger to win Best Supporting Actor for The Dark Knight, and apparently I have affinity on that type of runner in the market, and fortunately Heath got home for me. Maybe next time, Damar. All right.
El Chatin, by the way, that's right by Cerro Torre and Mount Fitzroy. Oh, this is some of the most spectacularly beautiful, prominent mountains on Earth.
Yep. Okay. Also went across to Puerto Natales in Chile to trek Torres del Paine. I had to fight off a pack of 5 stray dogs in Puerto Natales with my backpack, but eventually did that and was able to make the trek. Puerto Natales really is not that much outside of the one kind of USD $1 equivalent pisco sours. Not a ton going on in Puerto Natales, but Torres del Paine is magnificent and well worth a trek as well. But yeah, Mount Fitzroy, El Chalten, can't recommend enough. All right. Big Ten teams, Drew, are looking to boost their resume for the big dance down the backstretch of the conference season. And on Tuesday night, 4 teams will make their case for the committee. It starts when Iowa travels to East Lansing for a battle with Michigan State at 6:30 Eastern. Then stick around as upset-minded Maryland tries to take down Wisconsin at 9. Stream both games exclusively on Peacock. All right. Russell Wilson, who remains a fixture in NFL pop culture. His 2024 team, he is -110 to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are talking about a quarterback battle between Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, which sounds like a bad fever dream that was left on the cutting room floor of Mississippi Grinds. The Broncos are +320 for him to remain there. And the Falcons +450. Pats +450, Raiders 6-1, and that's kind of your top tier. Do you have any sense, any mail on where Russ ends up?
Fox Broadcasting booth of choice? No, I'm being somewhat facetious, but at the same time, like I don't really know what you're seeing for cost that would kind of convince you that he's your answer for starting quarterback in 2024 or beyond. That said, the name that I think gets bantied about and has sort of the kind of the breadcrumbs around it that kind of makes sense is the Panthers, because you have a somewhat similar statured quarterback in Bryce Young, who you desperately need to get to at least kind of 80% of Russell Wilson's peak if to realize that draft choice. And I don't know ultimately if he's willing to take on the type of role of being a tutelage, but being a mentor. But I would definitely kind of look at that as sort of a huge price and say, there's a little bit of smoke. There's a little bit of path there where it makes sense when you say it out loud. Basically everywhere else where you have teams that, particularly in the AFC, need starting quarterbacks, I think it's all going to be draft. Patriots are going to draft a quarterback. Raiders are going to draft a quarterback. I think realistically, the AFC South is set with young quarterbacks. I think the Broncos are going to draft a quarterback. I cannot see Russell Wilson going back to the Broncos. I'm shocked that's the second choice in this market. He's not going. There's a kind of a not enough. It's chairs around, musical chairs wise, for some of these veteran quarterbacks this year. And I think in general, teams are going to pivot to the draft this year to try to answer questions in the quarterback market. And so I don't really see a suitor outside of taking on a role as a mentor in Carolina.
I'll say first, it is ridiculous that Emily Blunt is second favorite for Best Supporting Actress for Oppenheimer. She's genuinely had like one really, really good scene and then was completely anonymous the rest of the film. She's the second favorite for that award. If she wins that award, it is an absolute travesty. It'd be like remember when Kyle Korver made the All-Star team?
Sure.
Let's just give Emily Blunt an All-Star selection because she was on the team of the year in Oppenheimer. Yeah, really, it's like Oppenheimer's going to sweep everything between Robert Downey Jr., Cillian Murphy, Christopher Nolan. Clean sweep. It's a good, really good film. Certainly not unworthy, but I'm not sure it warrants this. And also, Ryan Gosling and Barbie. He's plus 600 for Best Supporting Actor. He was better in that film than Robert Downey Jr. was in Oppenheimer at minus 1,600, honestly. And, we don't vote on the most deserving. And we don't bet on the most deserving either. We bet on who's going to win, and apparently it's going to be Robert Downey Jr. Anyway, Russell Wilson. I think so. Russ, he was, if you look at the EPA completion percentage over expected composite, he was 13th in the NFL, which is pretty good. But EPA per play, he was 18th. PFF grade, he was 18th. That makes perfect sense to me. He very much feels like the 18th best quarterback in football. So I think it's just a question of, is there any team that he could go to where he vaults them into being a meaningful team? And I guess the Falcons, like if the Falcons had Russell Wilson this past year, I think they win the division, which would be important to them. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl or anything, but the Raiders have always made some sense given that they're probably not going to be picking high enough to take a marquee quarterback in the draft. But I don't think Aiden O'Connell, who, by the way, I interviewed Aiden O'Connell on Radio Row. He was lovely. And one of my favorite moments on Radio Row is as we were leading into the interview, we were showing like a highlight of him throwing a touchdown pass to Jacoby Myers. Mm-hmm. And Aiden O'Connell's watching the highlight being like, yeah, that was sick. Which is great.
Who is that guy? It's me.
And he's commenting on how he didn't realize his jersey was all scuffed up after the highlight. Now someone should have told him so he looked better on TV. But only wish the best for Aiden O'Connell, but don't think he's going to be the starter going forward for the Raiders. And I guess Russ would make sense there, stay in the division. But yeah, I don't think ultimately. Is there any team that you think he really would move the needle for?
Oh, no, for sure not. I mean, you're saying he's 18th best. Like, okay, I'm not like not definitely not going to nitpick that. Like, yeah, David was 18th best, but like, he's one where the situation he was in, the coach he was paired with, and what he was asked to do, right? Like none of it really spelled, okay, this guy is going to recover the level of championship contending quarterback. And yes, Sean Payton not being able to get more out of him than that. Sean Payton specifically deciding, hey man, we're going to put you in a box and really ask you to do, virtually nothing here. And even then he had some just absolute unbelievable gaffes, like the end of the Jets game where he fundamentally lost the game for them, with just a horrific throw. So I think there's enough that I would be very, very surprised if he has, like a really meaningful starting opportunity, and that, any team is convincing themselves we're going for a championship, we're signing Russ. I think it's much more the latter of, we're bringing him in to either help kind of challenge a young guy or, to try to help as like a mentor type of role. So I think that's just where it is. And honestly, like I'm getting the sense just from hearing what a lot of the evaluators are saying in the draft that there are a lot of teams like the Raiders who are like starting to talk themselves into the 4th, 5th, 6th best quarterback in this draft in round 1. And I think you could very well see 1, 2, 3 QB. And then at that point, 3 more go before the end of round 1. So if 6 teams are taking young kids and they're going to all think, hey, this is our CJ Stroud, we're going to leap to relevance right away with the rookie. It may be a tough scene for some of the established vets who are looking for jobs in the QB position.
Yeah, already looking forward to betting the NFL draft, which I know is very much up your alley. I kind of hate it, even though it's for the most part profitable and these markets are jokes and completely wrong. But it is kind of, it's very frustrating when something goes wrong in an NFL draft market, as opposed to just like betting on the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the Northwest Division, and knowing exactly what you're getting round by round. But yeah, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about Russell Wilson more as we go. But for now, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, go watch Mississippi Grinds. Go not watch Two for the Money, and go visit El Chalten. We'll see you tomorrow.